Hello and welcome, my name is Meepolis, they, she, he, and this is Literally Graphic. And today we are looking at volumes 1 to 6 of Fruits Basket Collector's Edition by Natsuki Takaya and translated by Sheldon Durska. I had originally thought I would do the entire series in one fell swoop, but even with a month of lead time, I just could not do it. I just took on too much with this month's TBR, surprise, surprise. So since the collector's editions go up to volume 12, this is a first half reread and review. Although asterisk, I never got more than halfway through the series before, so I really don't know what'll happen next. Not to mention that this video is already coming out late because I decided to try a new style at the last minute and lost my voice for a week. That said, let's circle back to the publication information. Initially published in the Hana to Yumi Shoujo magazine between 1999 and 2006, translated, it was published in English by Tokyopop between 2004 and 2009. This collector's edition that appeared to be about 2 original volumes per new volume were published by Yen Press between 2016 and 2017. Much like Full Metal Alchemist, there are now 2 anime adaptations of Fruits Basket. One came out in 2001 at 26 episodes before the manga was finished, and which I have started watching, and the second one came out between 2019 and 2021 and wrapped up at a total 63 episodes and was based off the full 24-volume series. There's also the anime movie Fruits Basket, Prelude. Fruits Basket, another sequel manga series that was originally kicked off to promote these collector's editions. Clicking over to her author bio on Goodreads, Natsuki Takaya is, quote, the pen name of a Japanese manga artist best known for creating the series Fruits Basket. She was born in 1973. Takaya is left-handed and once revealed that she wanted to be a mangaka since first grade when her sister started drawing. Born in Shizuoka, Japan, but was raised in Tokyo, where she made her debut in 1992. She enjoys video games such as the Final Fantasy series or Sakura Wars, or working on her different manga series, such as Fruits Basket, which is the second best-selling shoujo manga ever in Japan, and the top-selling shoujo manga in North America. In 2001, Takaya received a Kodansha Manga Award for shoujo manga for Fruits Basket. According to Takaya, in a sidebar of a Fruits Basket manga volume, she enjoys drawing girly ones, more than she does boys. Takaya also enjoys electronics and music, but dislikes talking about herself. Also revealed in the sidebar of Fruits Basket, Takaya broke her drawing arm, left. After Fruits Basket Volume 6 was published, she had to go into surgery and as a result had put Fruits Basket on a brief hiatus. Takaya made a full recovery, but complains that her handwriting had gotten uglier due to the surgery. During her hospital stay, she gained an interest in baseball, end quote. Other manga that Natsuki Takaya has produced include Twinkle Stars, Tsubasa, Those with Wings, and Phantom Dream, among others. Content notes for queerbaiting, gender policing, abusive family death, family abandonment, love triangles and jealousy, smoking, gangs, adults with very bad boundaries, and suicidality. And a note that Fruits Basket has a huge cast of characters, most of them in high school, some in middle school, and some over 18, all being subjected to the family abuse stuff. Keywords that came to mind reading this first half of the series: found family, cute, cult, pretty boys, coming of age, tracing your own path, fan clubs, school government, and love. Clicking over to Anime Planet, the synopsis for Fruits Basket is, quote, after a family tragedy turns her life upside down, plucky high schooler Tohru Honda takes matters into her own hands and moves out into a tent. Unfortunately for her, she pitches her new home on private land belonging to the mysterious Sohma clan, and it isn't long before the owners discover her secret. But as Tohru quickly finds out when the family offers to take her in, the Sohmas have a secret of their own. When touched by the opposite sex, they turn into the animals of the Chinese zodiac. End quote. And to further elaborate just a bit, in this first half, a lot of time is spent introducing each member of the Zodiac, as well as the backstory on Tohru's family situation and that of her friends. Reading through Volume 6, now that Tohru has met everyone, we seem to be transitioning into a new phase of the story. It's all very intriguing. As somewhat outlined in my content notes section, there's a lot of hurt people in this series, to put it lightly, and some stumbling towards escape and perhaps even some healing. The theme of turning your life around seems to have played itself out in some of the backstories and just might a couple more times before the end of the series. I initially read approximately the first half of Fruits Basket right as it was being translated into English. It wasn't my first ever manga, but after introducing me to Marmalade Boy, this recommendation from the same friend came pretty close behind. While it's impossible to deny the appeal this would have had for early teens me, if I remember correctly, I fell off largely because it felt like the story kept circling back on itself, and because I was having difficulty getting my hands on it, being a poor teen living in the middle of nowhere. Pros at the time would have included the queer baiting. It was the most queer my media consumption would get for most of the next decade, found family of weirdos and cast-offs, and of course the drama. It also did a good job queuing me up to my next favorite anime of the time, Elron Host Club. Revisiting the first half of the series, I wouldn't say it's still my favorite, but it did surprise me more than a little. PG, maybe PG-13 at the most. Some of the dialogue was a bit more risque than I was expecting, strictly comparatively, that is. Again, considering my background at the time, that would have been extremely intriguing. These days, I must admit to finding the eyes extremely distracting. They're just so huge. Of course, it's just a style, so I can't really be that harsh. Character development and plot-wise, it's not the most mature masterpiece to ever masterpiece, but it also feels like more than it sometimes gets credit for. I'm going out on a bit of a limb here, but it seems like Takaya plays the high school drama notes pretty well, incorporating a higher proportion of dark notes while remaining optimistic, and that takes skill. Looking at gender and sexuality, we've obviously touched on this a lot already. That said, written in the early 2000s in Japan, I feel like it's fairly safe to assume that at least at that point, the premise was not meant to be an anti-trans gotcha moment. Certainly correct me if I'm wrong, or if people have decided to use it as such now. It's kind of funny to think about what the Sohma family curse would reveal about people's chromosomes. Obviously, there's a lot more diversity than XX and XY, so it's a flawed premise from the start. But what would happen to people with extra chromosomes, for example, if they embraced a member of the Sohma family, or if they were a member of the Sohma family? Looking at race, about the same as most manga I've read, one of the characters has a parent from Europe. Class, work, and material assets play a really outsized role, especially to start, in the plot of the first half of Fruits Basket. We literally start with a girl who is so obsessed with not being any trouble that she thinks her best option is to move into the woods and work extensively after school in order to pay her own way through school. Obviously, I don't need to come to any final assessment as to how I feel that Tohru's character is being treated. I feel that, at least at the start, there are some warnings for those of us who really just give. With her foray into houselessness being rather brief, it's fairly believable that Tohru avoids the most dramatic realities of houselessness, assuming, perhaps falsely on my part, that they are similar between Japan and so-called North America. Although I appreciate that her body still clearly shows the toll, even if it's ultimately unashamed to be a cartoon and not a text to emulate your life after. Then there's all the gang activity that comes up in various characters' backgrounds. Since reading Fruits Basket, the only other Japanese gang-related plots I've read in manga is Way of the House Husband. Well, maybe Black and White, I guess. Anyway, very male-dominated at the very least, so I don't really have any context to fit this into. Is this good representation or is it bad? I don't really like digging into people's opinions until I finish the whole thing, but comments would be appreciated. Looking at ability versus disability, nothing that felt terribly substantial commentary-wise. Although, as always, I'm not the final judge on that. But the series did initially leave me feeling like Japanese people are very concerned about colds. Is this the case? I don't really know much about that either. I feel like it has played a much less substantial role in most of the manga I have read since. The whole turning into an animal when certain people embrace them, or at points of weakness, is a physical limitation that has created a lot of social barriers for the entire family. Which brings this first half review of Fruits Basket to a close. Bye y'all, keep reading and organized and capitalist oppression. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.